Okay, I know this is a long video and you guys don't have the attention spans for it, so I made some timestamps so it's easier to skip through parts of the video. This is more like a reference video than a tutorial video, so feel free to skip. Without further ado, let's start the video. Labels. There are 4 types of labels: track, in between, timeline, and camera. When you click on the plus next to the animation folder, you'll see something called a track label. Right click anywhere on this area and you type out anything, then you can drag it around. You can delete it by just clicking on it and backspacing the text. It's usually to annotate on the timeline what's happening in the animation. Let's say on frame 40 the character becomes sad or something. You could just annotate on the timeline with a track label. In-between labels are a guide for timing in-betweens. Right click on the animation folder and you can choose between the hollow one or the white one, both works. It is good for any group projects with in-betweeners, but if you work alone, this is also good for planning timing in case you forget it. Camera labels appear only on camera folders, so to make one, go to Animation, New Animation Layer, to the Camera folder. Click on the plus sign, but this time if you right click, you'll show the camera notation list. If you don't want to choose from that, you can just type it out. Timeline label lets you put your labels at the top so that when you scroll up or down, the labels are still visible. You can create it by going to Animation tab, Label, and create Timeline label. The downside to this is that you can't really move it, and if you need to delete it, you have to go back to the Animation tab label, then delete Timeline label. Keyed free transforms is good if you want to move like a plane. In CSP, you can switch to raster, vector, or image material layers. This method only works on image material layers. For example, let me draw something and then convert it into a image material layer by right-clicking on the layer and then convert layer. Set it to image material layer. Control-Shift-T and then move it slightly a bit and then press OK. This will make CSP register it as a free transformed object. So when you go into the keying mode, it will allow you to key different points of the corners. So like this, for example. In addition to this, you can also tile the planes. So convert anything you put in the layer tab into an image material layer. Then when you select the operation tool and open up the tool property window in the windows, you can see an option to tile the image. You could tile it in multiple directions, but we want to tile it this way first. Then when you key it, it gives this really weird perspective trippy thing here. Yeah. Keyed masks. This just makes your mask move. And so let's say if you want to have a bunch of twinkling stars and you're too lazy to animate it, a quick way to do this is sort of make a checkerboard mask and then put it on the layer with the stars. Then what you want to do is select the mask in the layer tab, then click the key button. Then you move it. Now the star seems like it's twinkling. So yeah, you can adjust it by going to this plus button. And if you want to smooth it out, this brings me to the next topic, which is graph editor. CSP has 3 interpolation types. There's smooth, linear, and hold. Mostly I use the graph editor if I want to have more control of the smooth type, like ease in, ease out. There's more control because I get to play with the handles. If the motion isn't slow enough, you have to adjust the curve by making another key near it and guiding the handles yourself. You can also unpair handles, which is good for sharp motion. You can use this for camera as well. The graph editor shows the factors of the objects you're trying to move. So objects with masks will have options for the masks, and key transformed objects will have options to move the individual corners. It's rarely used, but it's just a good thing to know. Edit track / multiple timelines. If you right click one of the animation folders, you'll see something called Edit Track. This is very helpful if you want to rename things according to your timeline order or a layer tab order, as well as create numerous cells at once. Click Assign Multiple Cells and make an N number. I'll just put 50. Number frames just means how many frames you want each cell to last, so on 1s, on 2s, or on 3s. I'll put mine on 3s. You can choose to repeat it if you want, but for this example, I just stick with these settings. Once you've created these cells, you have to go back to Edit Track and create all the supported cells to make the layers for all of them. Then you can finally animate on them. Now let's talk about working on multiple timelines on a project. You can make a new timeline by pressing this timeline with a plus. You don't need to worry about all these other settings unless you're working in multiple different frame rates. But yeah, that's about it.
You can't remove your folders from different timelines though. However, to make it more cleaner, I guess you can make a camera for each shot and put all your animation folders in them like folders. So timeline 1 is camera 1, timeline 2 is camera 2, etc. You can switch between timelines by pressing here. Layer stack versus timeline stack. Timeline stack is a workflow in CSP where you stack all your drafts, tie downs, lines, base color, shades, highlights, etc. on the timeline itself like one big sandwich. It can look messy on the layer tab and on the timeline. Layer stack is where you put all those elements into a folder and number it. It may look messy in the layer tab, but it looks clean on the timeline. To keep things short, here's a comparison sheet I did with the two workflows, so go figure.
Symmetry animation folder. This method lets you animate while having a symmetry ruler on. So you make a layer with a symmetry ruler, select the lines of symmetry in your tool property window, then drag that little ruler icon onto the animation folder. So just like that, you can animate with symmetry. Though you can't really move the drawings with lasso tool because it can't work. You can move it with this asset move tool, which is kind of like a liquify tool, but it doesn't really ruin any anti-aliasing or anything. You'll end up with something trippy like this. Layer property animation. So this is good if you don't want to do outlines for your effects or if you're too lazy. Let's say you're doing some fire effects with just shapes using your lasso fill, but then suddenly you want the lines. You want the line art. So select the animation folder, open the layer property window, and click the outline. You can change the color and as well as adjust its width. There's also settings to play with the watercolor edge and screen tones and also layer color. So yeah, feel free to experiment with that. But I mainly use it to outline animated silhouette.
Auto-Action. Auto-Actions lets you record multiple actions you do in CSP and then play them all at once with buttons. Say you want to make 20 cells in one press of a button. You go to your Auto-Action window, create a new Auto-Action set, name it. This is your first Auto-Action. You can create more by clicking Add New Auto-Action and delete them with this button. Okay, so this is the record button. Once you're ready, you can record. I will spam new cells for 20 times and then stop recording. You can choose to change and edit the actions by deleting it or making new ones in between, so you don't have to re-record them completely. I will name this Auto-Action ones times 20. You can choose to assign a hotkey for this to make it faster by going keyboard shortcuts. By going keyboard shortcuts, they should have an entire category for Auto-Actions. But if not, you can right-click the empty area and press button mode to easily use Auto-Actions. To go back, press the 3 lines on the top left to exit button mode. You can delete sets by right-clicking and going edit set and delete set. Light table. Light table are used mostly for in-betweening stuff and when onion skin just isn't enough. So go to your animation cells tab, select the animation folder you're working on. When you scrub the timeline, you can see that the tab follows along with the cell you're in. What you see here on the tab in the middle is the cell specific light table, and on the bottom is the general light table. I will draw a cat in cell 1. When I go around the timeline, you will see only the cat in cell 1. But if you drag this to the general light table, you will see cell 1 throughout the whole timeline as a light table. Let's go to cell 4. If you drag the cat into the cell specific light table, you'll only see the light table cat in cell 4. If you don't want the light table cat anymore, you can delete it with this button. For example, here's a quick demo. I want to in between this head turn, but my onion skin is not far enough. So I go to the keys, which is in this cell, drag it to the general light table, and then go to this other cell and do the same. Now I can see both keys anywhere in the timeline. To differentiate with color, click on one of them and go to color mode and change layer color. I'll put mine as blue, go to the other key and do the same, I'll put mine as red. To change the opacity, if you want the opacity to move together, make this button on. But if you want to control them individually, turn this button off. Then you can make the in-between. And if you're good to go, just delete the light table cells. A quick way to use the light table is with this button with the lock. Go to the cell you want to reference, click it, and you can just easily reference it anywhere on the timeline. When you're done, just click the button and everything should be as it was. Audio. For audio, just drag an MP3 or WAV in the canvas and then it should make it in the timeline as an audio folder.
You can also key the volume in the timeline, that and using graph editor for it.
If you're talking about syncing FPS to BPM, however, well, that requires a little math. So if you want to ensure that your animation syncs with the beat, look at the song's tempo in BPM, beats per minute, and then just find its factors using this website. And choose the number less than 60. That's it. Example, I want to make a music video for a 140 beats per minute song. I just type 140 and then see that I can work with a frame rate that is around this range. Maybe I will want to do 20 FPS. Whether you want it to be fast or slow is really a matter of personal taste. Now, if it's in some crazy time signature like 9/8 or something, I guess just use video editing at that point.
Shot template. Shot templates make it so that when you create a new animation, everything that you've put in the layer tab comes with it. Industry templates like these usually have time to frame notation, cut number, episode number, etc., as well as a border and center marking or something, compositional stuff. To make an animation template, you make a new animation, put all the things you want to have while working on the animation on the layer tab, and then you go edit, register material, template, name your template, put it in the material folder in your downloads, add a tag so it's easier to find. I'll put mine as template. Now when you click on new animation, you'll see this thing called the shot template. Click on it, then type in your tag, find your template, again select it. Now every time you make a new animation, you should see your own custom template. You can change it anytime. Panorama. So for the panorama method, you need a 360 image, something that looks like this or this. You can get them from Polyhaven or Clip Studio Assets, or you could use a grid to make your own 360 background. So you make a 3D layer and then go to the operation tool settings. You'll see Panorama. Under it, click the file icon and load up your image. You can drag your mouse and move it around. Scroll wheel to mess with the perspective. Under the panorama settings, you'll see something called fisheye perspective as well. So be sure to play around with that. The way it works is basically you put it in your animation folder, rename it to 1. Every time you make a new cell, just move the background. New cell, move BG. New cell, move BG. It's like stop motion animation. If you want the perspective lines, you can click the ruler with an X to activate it. If you want to move the background in 2D, all you have to do is put this 3D layer into a folder. Then select the folder, then you can move it around without messing the perspective. Camera. So for the camera, pretty simple. I just want to talk about the case, in the case you're working with some different aspect ratio, but you still want to pan it around. You could plan this before starting the animation like a normal person, but if you're midway, you can still choose to change the aspect ratio in 2 ways. First way is to change the resolution, set it to like the closest possible to 1, so I'll put 0.99999, and then the camera will fit your canvas size. Either that, or you could just change your canvas size small enough that it crosses the output frame, which is this blue rectangle here. However, in both cases, you have to stick with the aspect ratio for the rest of the project, as when you try to change the canvas size, the camera will now change with it. 3D animated figures. Okay, I'll be honest, I don't know why you want to do this, but okay, fine. So you get your 3D model from the materials windows and then drag it to the canvas. All you need to do is move the 3D figure, new cell, move figure, new cell. It's basically like stop motion, but harder. I guess you could do this if you're bored, or if you have something you want to plan out, or in any case, you can use this technique. Liquify animation. So if you're ever too lazy to animate something with the next frame looking similar enough to the last frame without having to do anything, you could either copy paste and redraw some of it, or you could use the Liquify tool and morph it to your liking. The drawback is that the line quality will be ruined, so any anti-aliasing on any hard edges will turn soft. Since this technique only works in raster, you could do it with painted animations, like this one. I made multiple key paintings and just in between them with the Liquify tool. You have to pay attention to the forms in order for this to look good. But if you're feeling experimental, you can style it to like the animator Pilot Red Sun. You could do it with this technique, yeah. Vector brush switching. This technique only works if you're animating with vector layers. So let's say you want your line art to have like a chalk texture. So I'll go to a chalk brush, tool property window, click on the wrench, get to the brush shape, and then click
Add to presets.
Once you're done, click on the operation tool and select the vector layer of your animation. Open up tool property, you'll see something called brush shape. In here, you can find your brush and select it. Then my drawing now has a chalky brush texture. Also, there's no easy way to do this for a whole animation because Clip Studio Paint doesn't have this function, but you could choose to manually change the brush texture for each frame one by one if you wish. Or you could download a macro recorder to do it for you. It saves you from getting arthritis. Animated brush. So if you want your brush to be animated, well, to do that, you have to make the animation you want the brush to have. So for this example, I'll use a rotating cube. I've made 3 frames of the rotating cube, making sure that it loops. Okay, so I'll make a new brush. Preferably one that has no pen pressure, so I'll just duplicate the marker to copy its pen pressure settings. You then have to make sure it's all in raster, register it as a brush tip, and make it easy to find in your downloads. Next, you want to open up its tool property window, go to the wrench, and go to its brush tip. Go to your material downloads and drag in your frames one by one in sequence to your animation.
Make sure your gap is fixed and set to your liking, how big you want the gap to be. Bump up the brush size if you think it's small, and you should be able to see the full image.
Make sure that the brush's repeat method is on repeat.
And once you're done, go to your brush shape and add to presets.
Okay, so now let's make a vector animation folder, make a line and then duplicate it multiple times. Vector brush switch each and every frame, go to the tool property, click the wrench, and see the brush tip frames that you've laid out. So for every next cell, you move 1 frame behind to make it animated. So this frame, I move it behind, the next frame, move 2 behind, etc. This is how it would look like at the end. This technique can be used for characters as well. Nested folders. Nesting folders is useful for organizing your frames. Layer stack is a technique where all your lines, colors, and shades are in one folder of a cell. This will look clean on your timeline as a result. If you want a clear read on which layer you're working on in the folder, you can pull up the animation cell folder. Very useful. That, or you could use the search layer window and then filter the parts of the drawing you're working on. So let's say for lines only. For keying, the purpose of nested folders is to avoid any confusion. And it's easier to have control over the positions, scale, and rotation. Keying them in the same layer makes it hard to see which parts are doing what. This is especially useful if you want to ever do rigging on CSP. I don't recommend it, but when there's other programs that were made for rigging, but I'll tell you how to do it anyways. Rigging. Okay, so to tackle this, we have to talk about the elements of rigging. To have a rig, we need to draw out different body parts and all of its variations. Next, you need to have good parenting and pivots, which just means you have to put the pivot point in the right place so that it rotates well. And you have to nest folders in a hierarchy so that the end joints rotate with the start joints. I'll try to be as brief as possible with this section. I've drawn my body parts and I've put them in the hierarchy like this. Then I compile it together to make a character. To animate it, I would key the master folder, the folder that holds every folder. This will make every folder in this folder all in keyframe mode. To start, I would move the body first, then the arms, then the legs, then the head. You can jump back and forth if you need to. Once you're done with that, it should look something like this, and your computer should look something like this. If you made it this far, congratulations, you wasted 15 minutes of your life. But also, thank you for watching. This is the first time I've scripted a video this long, so it might be a bit shaky at times, but you know, I'm willing to try anything once. Apart from that $20 incident. Okay, bye.